Let's talk about Elon Musk, whose X, which formerly was Twitter, filed a lawsuit against an purported anti-hate speech group this week that I think raises, actually, I think perhaps one of the most important conversations in American politics and culture in general right now. But this is from NBC News. Xcore, the parent company of social media platform formerly known as Twitter, it's like Prince, filed a lawsuit in San Francisco federal court Monday against a nonprofit organization that monitors hate speech and disinformation, following through on a threat that had made media headlines hours earlier. So you have just hours between those headlines and the actual lawsuit itself. So it was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California and accuses the Center for Countering Digital Hate, so the CCDH, of orchestrating, quote, a scare campaign to drive away advertisers from the X platform by publishing research reports claiming that the social media service failed to take action against hateful posts. Now, in the filing, the Twitter lawyers, the X-Court lawyers, allege that the CCDH carried out, quote, a series of unlawful acts designed to improperly gain access to protected X-Court data needed by the CCDH so that it could cherry pick from the hundreds of millions of posts made each day on X and falsely claim it had statistical support showing the platform is overwhelmed with harmful content. This is actually fascinating because one of the biggest problems social media companies have right now, and in fact, why you see over and over again in the Twitter files and the Facebook files that Jim Jordan has started sharing, and people like Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger have been covering excellently, what you start to see is that these companies are so terrified, maybe not under Elon Musk, but they're so terrified of pressure from the media in many cases, which is odd that the media is acting as like the censors, the defenders of free speech and the First Amendment are the ones that are pressuring these companies, and also from the government to crack down on hate speech. And fundamentally, it's a question of how we define hate speech. So here's more from NBC News. The research report that drew particular ire from Xcore claimed that the platform had failed to take action against 99% of 100 posts flagged by the CCDH staff members that included racist, homophobic, and anti-Semitic content. Now, I don't think this research is public, and the NBC thing says that New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, and NBC they've cited their research, so that is like actually pretty key. How are they defining hate speech? How are they defining racism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism in particular, Ryan, this is where we found agreement that sometimes it is defined so broadly that it becomes almost meaningless. I think the same thing is true of racism and homophobia. When you're calling people who just disagree with Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the national anthem racist, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, if you're calling that racist, I think that's a crazy definition of racism. In the same way that I think we agree, some of these definitions of anti-Semitism are crazy and harmful to the cause of actually identifying and stamping out the scourge of anti-Semitism. What do you make of this suit, Ryan?
I think, Twitter had, under Elon Musk, the ability to go to these advertisers and show them all of the data that is in their possession, do all of the fancy analysis of that data, and show to Nabisco or whoever is upset about the alleged hate speech, and say, look, no, this little nonprofit, they cherry picked, they stole our data. It's unfair the way that they're singling us out. And here I can promise you that this is a platform that is going to be safe for your advertisements to appear on. And here's how we can make those promises. Elon Musk either fired the teams that were capable of doing that, or just decided not to do that because the message he himself was delivering publicly was the opposite. He was yelling at these advertisers, saying that they ought to be standing up for free speech, and if they pulled their money, if you remember the very beginning, he threatened them that he was going to sick his army of people on them and like boycott them in kind of a proto Bud Light thing. He never managed to kind of pull any of that off. And so the whole, it almost seems like too easy of a shot to dunk on him for the hypocrisy around the free speech here. He's a free speech absolutist who's suing a nonprofit for speech, saying that its speech, was insulting to them and harmed them. But yeah, like that, I have zero sympathy for him because he has all of the Twitter data. Like if Unilever is concerned, if he wants to meet Unilever's concerns about the platform, he's capable of pitching them just like any other social media platform is. But he doesn't want to. He thinks, rightly or wrongly, but he thinks that Unilever's concerns are flawed and get in the way of his, the way that he wants to run his platform and the people that he wants to allow, onto his platform. And so, to me, you can't have it both ways. Like you don't get to decide for Unilever where they want to advertise. I do agree with you that I've always found it a little bit corrupt when digital media companies are doing this kind of crusading reporting about who's advertising on Facebook or Twitter or like, and calling all of these advertisers, and it really feels like pressuring them to stop advertising with them. And I call it corrupt because they are direct competitors. Like digital media wants those advertisers. So if they can get these huge accounts to respond to my request for comment about why you're advertising with Facebook or with Twitter, despite the fact that X person said X terrible thing on Twitter, respond by 12 tomorrow, or I'm going to write a story that you're still advertising with them. And so then they pull out. Now they still have this advertising budget. Lo and behold, they run that advertising budget with the companies, with the digital media companies that drove them away. And so I have never thought that there's a directive coming kind of from the sales team, like, please do this. But the economic and financial incentives are such that it's always kind of made that feel pretty icky.
Yeah, and this is a big problem with advertisers, and I think that's actually probably why you see the lawsuit. And I actually don't know what they're going to be able to show that was illegal, unlawful. Like I think that's pretty difficult, given where, to your point, A, about coming from a free speech absolutist is sort of amusing, but secondly, I actually don't know what in that report is going to actually constitute defamation or fraud or anything like that. It reminds me actually of the story about the Southern Poverty Law Center we talked about not that long ago, where they had to admit in court filings, they like to act as though their designations, which I think smear Christians, and conservatives in ways that are, some of those groups that they identify absolutely deserve to be on their hate map, their hate list, whatever it is. Some do not. And they had to admit in court filings recently, they're being sued by one of those groups. They had to admit that they were subjective and, not that their opinion, basically. And that's when we're, throwing around words like racist, homophobic, anti-Semitic, it's always been a matter of opinion. We haven't always agreed on what the definition of those terms are, then I think that's an important thing to recognize. There was a time when there was just abject and disgusting denial of to call racism actual racism, and so I mean, yes, I think that stuff is all important, but I also think the weaponization of those terms is important, and advertisers are not going to catch on to that because they don't want to risk advertising on a space like Twitter, where people are going to send them messages and easily be able to tweet and be like, why is your advertisement showing up next to this tweet? So I'm looking at, I should correct myself, I think some of this stuff actually is public. I think the research here, a lot of it actually is public, and some of this is a stretch. Some of it is absolutely hate speech, and it's absolutely like just incitement. As an advertiser, you would never, ever want your content showing up next to, this is one of the tweets, quote, Hitler was right, with a montage of Hitler attached to the words. You can understand why, Unilever wouldn't want to be next to that tweet, advertising for their soap. So it's both a problem for Elon Musk and a problem for these groups, Ryan. As you mentioned, it was actually like NBC News that contacted Google about the comment section of the Federalist one time, trying to get us kicked off of Google's ad platform, which is a monopoly. It wasn't Google. It was actually NBC News, other journalists. Again, taking down a competitor by saying our comment section, as opposed to Google, which runs YouTube, by the way, it was beyond the pale and meant we should get off of the Google ad platform. So ads are actually where we're stress testing our concept of free speech in an interesting way. So it's a lawsuit definitely to keep an eye on, because it does in and of itself microcosmically kind of stress test all of those questions. But I'm not sure what's actually going to be illegal here. So good luck to Elon, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. Best of luck out there, buddy.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.